Welcome everybody. Our speaker for today is Gaspar Pérez Scornik from Maths for More, and he will be taking us through this session on MathType. So to our new attendees, just a couple of practical things. Everyone is muted, so if you have questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat window in your GoToWebinar panel on your right-hand side of your screen. We will try to answer some of the questions during the presentation, and hopefully we'll have time to cover the rest at the end. We will be recording this webinar, and both the recording and the questions from the session will all be answered and made available to you afterwards. This information will be emailed to you as soon as we have everything ready. So with that, I'll pass the word on to Gaspar. Just a moment. There you go. You can share your screen.
All right, thank you very much. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you all very much for coming to this presentation about MathType. I am Gaspar, as I've been kindly introduced, and I work here at Wiris, which will need a bit of explanation because if you are any of you who are familiar with MathType know, the product MathType was produced by Design Science, and now I'm talking to you from Wiris, so I'm going to explain what's going on there just briefly so that we know where we are. Although it will have to do with some of the functionalities that we're talking about. We'll get to that in a second. So on the one hand, we have Wiris, a company in Barcelona, and we produced different tools for mathematics in the online space, one of which was a math editor, very similar to MathType. I mean, similar in the way that all math editors are similar. You have buttons and you can press things and formulas appear, just as the familiar MathType works. And then on the other hand, we had Design Science working in the desktop space for the addition of mathematical formulas. So we joined just last year, and with that we started a long process an ongoing process of putting together our two technologies, taking the good parts from both of them and making a unified experience for all the different things that we covered. So whereas with the Wiris side of things, we were looking more at online applications and integrating into online platforms, whereas MathType, as you all know, had to do with Microsoft Word basically, and all other desktop applications where you might want to add math formulas. So the idea is that now you have MathType everywhere, whether you're using some online document word processors such as Google Docs, the most popular one, or even other online platforms, you can integrate MathType into it. Or if you're still using Microsoft Word, then you'll get some of the features that were available in Wiris that we'll see right now. So just to talk about, well, since I assume that most of you are more familiar with MathType, the desktop application, we are going to see some of the new things that the Wiris side of MathType will bring to this as far as functionalities for the equation editor. We also, I don't think we'll have time, but we have a different tool called Wiris Quizzes, which incorporates MathType. If we have time, we'll get to it. If not, of course, you can always contact us for information. So without further ado, first thing that we're talking about with MathType is this interface on the right. This is what was always our online math equation editor. And as you can see, it has two modes. So one is the toolbar, the more traditional thing. We'll get into the specifics of how that works in a second. And the other is a handwriting mode, which we will also look at soon. And then the idea is to take all of the good things that MathType on the desktop brought and put that together with what we have over here. So on the one hand, we have just a traditional toolbar with different tabs to cover all of your different needs, both for primary, well, all K through 12 and higher education. You can also insert equation numbers, as MathType used to be able to do, well, it still does. Keyboard shortcuts, et cetera, et cetera. We've actually been working, and we're still doing on some of the things that design science had been doing in MathType, which we really liked. We are incorporating those into our tools and putting them all together to create a wonderful experience for editing math formulas. You can use colors, choose fonts, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just sort of like MathType has always been, but with a different look, perhaps more modern. It's a toolbar. You can add formulas in this way. It's nothing extremely new other than how it looks and feels. On the other hand, we do have something which really changes the game as far as editing formulas, the way that you edit formulas, which is the handwriting input mode. So how this works is you have a canvas where it's just a blank space for you to write a formula, as you can see in this short little video here, and then that actually gets recognized and turned into a typeset mathematical formula, as if you had edited it with the toolbar. So you write a formula with your finger if you're on a touch device or with your mouse, etc. And then that gets recognized and turned into a formula. So not just the actual, not just like the drawing of the formula gets inserted into the text. That would be simple enough. But that actually all the characters get recognized and turned into a formula. So it recognizes those strokes that you put in, and it makes a formula just in the same way as if you had written that formula with the regular toolbar. And in fact, you can combine both. So you can write a part of the formula in the toolbar, then maybe do something by hand, go back to the toolbar, et cetera, et cetera. If we have time, I'll do a demo. I can bring up the editor and show that to everybody. And of course, this does work on any touch device, as is the intent for it. So the idea is that we are bringing MathType to not just computers, but also to mobile devices, for obvious reasons. I mean, that's obviously a very big game changer for being all the places where you can edit math formulas. On the other hand, we have something that's kind of in its infancy at this point, but I would like to talk about, which is that well, we've always had sort of a reskin or an alternative MathType toolbar, which is designed for chemistry. So at the moment, it's just the same interface as MathType, but the first tab is more oriented towards chemical symbols. The way that the font looks is more chemistry oriented, and of course, then you have this convenient thing with the periodic table, all of the arrows, so you can write chemical reactions and so on and so forth. So what can you do with this? Well, most of inorganic chemistry and simple reactions, or not simple reactions, but what I'm getting at is that this is something that needs a lot of work, and obviously the goal is to be able to reach organic chemistry with the handwriting mode. That would be where we're trying to aim at for now. It is a simple way of editing chemical equations and putting into a text the same way that MathType works. So with the joining of these two math types that this is all about, chemistry will also be on the menu so not just math, also chemical equations and chemical notation is something that we're going to bring to MathType users. And although probably what's going to happen is that this is a completely different tool called ChemType. So we have MathType and ChemType, MathType for math and ChemType for chemical formulas. And then, yeah, this is just a short little overview of all the different places. It's not nearly all of the different places, of course, but the most important ones: Office. We like to highlight that MathType is now again compatible for Mac. That was broken for a while, but it's now completely compatible both with Word and PowerPoint for Mac as of the latest version, or maybe a couple versions ago that was already true. And then, of course, the new things are Google Docs. That was not available before. So now you can use MathType in Google Docs the same way, or at least in a similar way as you used it in Microsoft Word. It's just a button that you press, you bring up the formula editor, the same thing that as MathType. XPS Office, for those people that are using XPS Office, it's popular in the East, in Eastern countries. So we also, have it there. And then another thing that before with MathType was not really talked about, or at least was not focused on, are learning management systems. So for those of you who are not quite familiar with learning management systems, those are, just basically the platforms that universities and other educational institutions, schools, use to manage all of their classroom contents, assessments, assignments, homework, et cetera, And this is just an example of how you can integrate MathType into an online platform. All of these are online platforms, and the most popular ones are Canvas and Moodle, of course. So you will also be able to use MathType there if that's where you need to use formula. So I guess the spirit of this new venture that we are taking on is that anything that you're using to write things, you should be able to write formulas. That's, if you work in math, at least that's a basic necessity. So we are bringing MathType to all of those different places so that you can just proceed normally as if you were using Microsoft Word before with MathType, and now you'll have MathType anywhere you need. And of course, there's always new things coming up and new areas to cover, but we'll work on chasing them as quick as possible. So yeah, that ends sort of the PowerPoint part of the presentation. And if we have time, I will do just show you a little bit about how the handwriting works, for example, and get into that. But before that, something very important is that just as a small thanks to everybody who is participating in this conference, we do have a discount code available for you to use. Of course, if there will be an email or something sent out, I assume that we can include that. If not, here it is for you to copy. It's just demo days altogether, no caps, although I don't think that the caps matter. No caps, no spaces. So yeah, you can please go ahead and use that demo code if you wish to get a 20% discount on MathType, just as our thank you for coming out here and showing interest and wanting to learn about MathType. And that will be available for some time after this. You can use that code. So that's that. I can write it. Can I write it in the chat here? I believe I can. I will do that. So there you have it in text. And now we will go to a quick little demo of MathType. Oh. Wiris.com/MathType. Click on demo. It's taking a while to load. Okay, great. So As I've explained before, this is what we were doing on the Wiris side of things in Barcelona before joining together with Design Science. So since I think that this is what people are less familiar with, I will focus more on this side of things, because the MathType interface, well, which is this one here, you all know this. I think that we have more familiarity with this, so I'm going to talk about what I've already talked about. I'm just going to show it in action on the web side of things. This is a web application. This is what it looks like. So you have all the different tabs with different symbols. Depending on your context, you would also be able to customize this toolbar so that the same way that in MathType you can change which buttons appear to you. You will also be able to do that in MathType depending on which context you're in. You can change which buttons appear basically. So I'm just going through the tabs so that you can see that all the different symbols for all the different necessities that you might have for math formulas, whether you're in primary or secondary or higher education. Those are in fact covered all the way up to calculus, for example, with the integrals and limits, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the other hand, as I mentioned before, we have this very powerful handwriting mode. So I'm going to cross this stuff out. And if I write, for example, 2x plus 1, then that gets recognized as 2x plus 1. That's what the formula is. I can, for example, keep editing this with the toolbar if I find some part of the formula easier to do that way. See, I want to put this in a fraction over 3. But then I realize that instead of 3, it actually should have been 4. So it's simple to use. It works fairly well. For most of the formulas that you can imagine, you can write it with your finger, and that will get recognized accurately and turned into a formula. So let's see how that looks. This is just the standalone sort of demo of MathType. It's not really doing anything right now. You're just writing the formulas. Let's see if I can look at that inside of Google Docs. Google.com. I'll create a blank document. And it's just an add-on from the add-ons repository, so to speak, of Google Docs. I think I have it installed. Yes, good. I do have MathType installed. So that brings up a little pop-up. The connection for some reason in this room is a little bit slow, but that came up. And now the same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and write a quick formula. We'll do f of x equals 3x. And then press insert. And that appears inside the text. I can make it bigger, of course, it's a little bit small in this case. And the same thing works with the toolbar. You just write a formula with that, and that appears inside the text. So here, if I were to write, consider the function f of x, blah, blah, blah. And so then I could create my homework assignment in that way in Google Docs. And that's, of course, automatically, all the advantages that Google Docs has, you will now add MathType to that. So that is how it looks, how it works inside of Google Docs. I don't know if it's necessary to look at another platform. It's basically always the same. You just go to somewhere in your toolbar where you'll find MathType and insert the formula that way. As for the chemistry, we have that up here. And the same idea applies. If I want to write a chemical formula, I can do it with the toolbar. So I'll write, for example, O and then 2, or I can do so with the handwriting mode, and that'll work in the same way. Oops, that's a bad 2. O2, add some arrows, etc., to continue writing my chemical reaction. So I have a math background, not a chemistry one, so I don't know any fancy chemical equations. But yeah, the same idea applies to chemistry. At the moment, this is a part of MathType, so if you can, I mean, when you get MathType now, you have this alternative toolbar for writing chemistry formulas. In the future, it will be a fully fledged tool for producing all kinds of chemical notation, from these simple equations all the way to organic chemistry. We're still, that's a product that's in its infancy at the moment, but this is a flavor of what is to come. So I think that's all that I have to say for the practical side of things. I think that explains fairly well what we have to offer, all the new things that we have to offer with MathType, and we'll continue to offer with chemistry, and so on and so forth. So at this point, we can proceed to any questions that you may have.
Very well. Let's see. Let's see with the co-organizers if you have caught up any questions from the audience.
Well, I haven't found any yet, but I have a question from my own here.
Sure.
Regarding MathType Desktop and how it stands as a replacement for Microsoft Equation Editor.
Yes. Well, Microsoft Equation Editor was discontinued. So now if you have Microsoft Office, you in fact cannot write formulas, at least very easily, because the equation editor does not exist anymore. They removed this. So now the best way to write formulas, maybe it was before, but now it's sort of the only way, is MathType. Yes. Was that where you were getting at?
Well, I was wondering how well it works together does it work as the Microsoft editor?
Oh yeah, I mean, for even when the editor did exist, it was good, but it had some flaws which MathType covered for. I mean, MathType was always a more complete tool than the equation editor. The editor was nice, but it was sort of just an afterthought, included in Microsoft Word if you wanted to write formulas. Whereas MathType, was an entire product designed for professional typesetting of mathematical notation, both at education but also research level. So it's a more than adequate substitute for the equation editor. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. So that was a little bit short, but we don't want to bore people too much. So if there are no further questions, then I think that's. Well, are there any more questions? Sorry.
Let's see. Not as far as I can see. So I guess
I have a question.
Yes, of course.
I'm just wondering if I want to use equations on web pages, for instance, on my WordPress site, on the articles there. Is an add-in to WordPress, or can I export and then add or embed in my web page?
Yes, exactly. So the idea with this, what you're seeing here, as opposed to the traditional MathType interface, this was a tool that has always been designed to integrate with other web applications. So if I go here, let's see, wiris.com/. So we integrate in a variety of different CMSs, and WordPress, yes, WordPress is one of those. It's just a plugin for your WordPress editor. So if you have a WordPress site, then you can add what you're seeing here, this MathType, with all of the features that we just saw into WordPress. And I'm saying WordPress now, but that means basically any online platform. We provide the tools to add MathType to it. In some cases, we have already done all the work of creating a nice plugin that's easy to install for someone who is not necessarily a developer. So because we've done the development work of making sure that those plugins are correctly maintained and easy to install. WordPress is one example of that. On the other hand, there's also always the toolkits, so that you can do the integration yourself if you're using a less popular platform. But for all of the common LMSs and CMSs such as WordPress, we are there. Yes.
Great to hear. So I will test it out. Yes.
Yeah,
it's always been a problem with the math equations in my articles. Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And what's important also is that the format that is used for these formulas that you're seeing is MathML, which I don't know how many of you are familiar, but MathML is the open standard for formulas on the World Wide Web. So this is a standard for how to put formulas inside of HTML documents. So it's not like when if MathType goes away, or if you stop using MathType, you will lose the ability to use those formulas, because we use a standard format, which is standard for all the World Wide Web. And because it only makes sense to do so. MathType in the past for the desktop used its own format. We are trying to move to making that also MathML so that it's easier for everybody, because standard formats are nice. So yeah, that's something important about the new MathType way of doing things.
And you still support TeX and LaTeX?
Yes, absolutely. So that's the other standard that we support is LaTeX. Yes.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Well, the math part
sorry.
of LaTeX. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have another question here if you were done with the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Will the traditional MathType program exist for desktop Office programs?
Yes, of course. That'll exist. The only thing that will happen is that it'll probably gradually get an updated look, more features from the old, from not the old one, but the web version of the product. So for the purposes of discussion, I guess we could call this MathType Desktop, and the other interface MathType Web, which is the two things that we're trying to bring together. So MathType Web will start to have some things for MathType Desktop, and MathType Desktop will start to have some things for MathType Web, but they will both continue existing, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was all the questions as far as I can see.
Okay.
So thank you very much for the presentation, Gaspar.
Great, thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.